Well, hey everybody, I'm Nathaniel Dodson from tutvid.com. Welcome right into this Photoshop tutorial where today we're going to take a look at this really cool photo drawn on effect. It's something I saw over on Behance. I don't remember the name of the artist, but I will make sure that I link them down in the description to this video. Go check it out. They have some really cool stuff they did. It's going to be better than what I did in this video because we're just kind of doing it live, so to speak. They dedicated some serious time and made this stuff look sick. So go check that out. We're going to take a look at how to manipulate the brush to best achieve this effect and how we use a little bit of masking as well to complete the illusion. If you enjoy this tutorial, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And with that out of the way, let's jump into Photoshop and check this thing out. All right, here we are in Photoshop. Now, this effect generally works best with brightly colored images or stuff over a solid background, but like any art, I guess you can really do it any way you darn well please. We're going to go ahead and grab a selection of her first, and we're just going to save that. So I'm going to grab my quick selection tool, and because she's such a contrasting object against this background, did I just refer to her as an object? Because she has such contrasting color and tone, it's going to be pretty easy to grab a selection, and I'm going to hold down Alt option here and just get rid of the little bit that is sticking out there from our selection. The selection doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but we need to have a nice starting point. I think this is what I would classify as good enough. And we'll go ahead and go select. We'll choose to save this selection right here, save selection. And I'm just going to name this woman, and yep, Operation New Channel, great. And Command or Control D to deselect. Over here in channels, we now have the woman channel that we can go ahead and grab anytime we need to make a selection. That'll be important later on. Next, what we want to do is grab the brush tool here and begin editing the brush so we can paint some lines here on top of her and make this thing look really cool. First and foremost, let's create a new layer. We're going to create probably a series of new layers here as we work out this effect. But the first thing I want to do is open up my brush settings panel right here. And I'm going to tick on shape dynamics because we're going to end up using some size jitter controls. Now, for our outlines, we're probably not going to use pen pressure. Now, you're only going to really have access to real pen pressure if you have a tablet like a Wacom tablet or a tablet that supports pen pressure. And if you don't have a tablet, you can still do this, but you'll probably want to use fade. In fact, we're going to be using fade a little bit later. Basically, this just, you can see I'm using my mouse and I'm just able to paint these lines that, you know, kind of resemble brush strokes, and they tail off after 500 iterations of the stroke have been laid down. I'm just going to delete them real quick. But for now, I think we're going to leave this to off because we're going to be creating just a rough outline of her hair. One thing I may do is bump up the roundness jitter a bit, maybe to like 45 or 50%. This is just going to give our line a little bit of roughness. It almost makes it look a little bit more organic. Maybe we'll go more like, I don't know, 65, 70, something like that. You can see it takes what would be a normal line. It just adds a little bit of roughness to it. It's going to help things look a little bit more organic. So a little roundness jitter, that's fine. And control for this is going to be off, which just means it's going to be totally random. Photoshop's going to control that, and I'm totally fine with that. Next, we're going to go to brush tip shape. I'm going to begin working probably with 30 pixel brush. Let's see what this looks like for an outline. I think that actually might be a little bit too thick, but we're going to make sure our hardness here is set to 100%, and the spacing should be 1%. If we increase spacing too much, I mean, you can see we're just going to get a line of dots. We want this to be a solid looking line just like that. All right, I am going to close out my brush settings real quick. Let's zoom in because I think the first thing we'll do is draw a selection around her, not really a selection, but draw with the brush tool around her hair. So we would make a selection roughly like this, right? Now I'm just obviously super duper rough, but I just want to look. See, that's way too thick. So I'm going to undo that a couple times, and we're going to use our square bracket keys, the left square bracket, and make this, let's maybe try half that size, 20. I still think that's too big. Let's go maybe 15. Yeah, I think 15 is where we'll live. So I'm going to also, if you have a newer version of Photoshop, you can turn on smoothing. So I do want smoothing. We're going to go with like 65%, something like that in the smoothing department. Just do what works for you. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, and I'm going to real quick draw the outline around her hair. And again, it doesn't have to be super perfect, but, you know, make it as nice as you can. And there we go. We have our initial outline just like that. Now, what I want to do is put a series of angular stripes inside of this container that we just drew. So here we would go back to our brush settings, and I am going to go back to shape dynamics, and here I'm going to turn pen pressure on, and we would need to adjust the brush tip shape. So I'm going to double click to just close out my brush settings again. And 15 we know works good when we're not using pen pressure, but we want probably twice that to get a similar looking thickness with pen pressure. So here you can see we're going to get, yeah, we're just going to get a nice thickness there if I go with 30. And I'm using pen pressure. And now I'm just going to draw these streaks kind of at this angle in her hair. And, you know, I kind of sort of want them to be about the same distance apart and roughly at the same angle as well. Something like so. There we go. Great. And then one down there. And, of course, we'll continue right up here across the top of her head as well. Oh, let me undo that. This is going to be kind of tricky here because we need to paint all the way across. Let's try something like that. That's a little bit too close. There we go, something like that. And then we'll continue down here. Something like that, we get this kind of cool effect. You can, add additional lines, make this tighter together if you want, or just stylize it in any way that you see fit. Again, the artists for the original piece that we're kind of copying, I'm sure they spent a lot of time just figuring out exactly where their lines went, maybe even traced some out with the pen tool just to get really super precise lines and have everything the same. But you can just go ahead and have some fun with it. So there we go. We have the hair, and you could name the layer if you want. I'm probably not going to name all my layers just for the sake of time. Let's create another new layer here, and I am going to come here and work on her face a little bit. Maybe what we'll do is put some dots above her eyebrows. We'll go back in here, and we'll shut, well, we're not going to shut off shape dynamics. We're just going to change size jitter to off in general, and we'll go ahead and place some dots above her eyes. Of course, we need to make sure we downsize our brush, so I'm going to use my left square bracket key, take it down to 15, and we'll just put some dots. Again, kind of evenly spaced as we can along the top of her eyebrow, kind of sort of something like that. And with smoothing turned on, maybe we can go ahead and add like an inverted teardrop or something here between her eyebrows. So we would go with something like that. Probably the stroke needs to be smaller, so I'm going to take it down to like maybe 5 or 6, something like so. And again, there's not really any right or wrong here. It's just kind of what looks good to you. I'm going to move down, and here over her hand, we'll kind of put like a mesh grill. So I'm going to, again, for this, we'll turn our pen pressure back on. We're going to boost the size of our brush back up to 30, and I'm going to move over so we can really see what I'm doing. I'm going to just create sort of a crosshatch type effect here. So I'm going to pull through, I'm going to pull through, I'm going to pull through, pull through again, pull through again. And then here I'm going to use this really cool little rotate view tool that Photoshop has hidden underneath the hand tool. Rotate view, and I'm going to rotate because I like to draw my streaks beginning at like the bottom left and drawing to the top right. So this will allow me to be able to do that. So you can see how we can just draw right through this, just like so, and get a nice looking kind of crosshatch thing there on her hand. We got that kind of cool effect going on. That's pretty cool. Maybe now that I'm looking at it, we'll also do some dots down her nose a little bit. So I'm going to grab the brush tool. We're going to shut off pen pressure. We're going to take this down to like, I don't know, about 10 or so. So it's roughly the size of what you would think would come out of that little teardrop shape. And maybe even put a couple dots up here in the teardrop like that. We can zoom out, and there we go. That looks kind of neat. We can create another new layer here. We're just kind of breaking stuff down. This really doesn't make any sense being together other than the fact that maybe we could say it's facial stuff. And when you can see we accidentally dropped a dot down there, it's easier here just to use the eraser tool rather than get mixed up with a mask, because we know that just is straight up a mistake. Make sure we're on layer 1 here where that dot is. Just wipe that away. We're going to work on layer 2 here. And now maybe we'll put like a little bit of a necklace type thing on her, maybe add some bracelets, something like that. So once more, grab the brush tool. We'll bump this guy back up to probably 15 for this. We want to make sure there's no size jitter happening here. And we'll just begin here behind her hand and paint what would be kind of the necklace, just sort of like that. And then we'll do like this V pattern like this. Kind of neat, kind of interesting. This is something that the artist does for their piece. And then here's where things get kind of interesting. So we could use the erase tool, or we could use a mask and just hide parts of this necklace that we don't want. So I'll add a layer mask here. And now we're already using the brush tool. This is what kind of makes this tricky. But we can go ahead, flip our foreground color to black, make our brush tool much bigger, and we can just go ahead and paint away some of this stuff here that we really shouldn't be seeing. Give it the illusion that it's tucking underneath her hand, and zoom way in. Grab that brush tool again, and now we want to paint with white. We're still painting on that layer mask, mind you. We're going to make our brush very, very small. We're painting with white, and we're just going to come in here and just apply a little bit of texture along the edge of this, just to give it sort of a realistic, yep, we're just fading right in underneath the hand. And now if I zoom out, you're going to see we have this necklace-looking shape that is coming out from underneath her hand. Now it's probably a little bit too big and bold, and the way it intersects the hair is not necessarily what we would consider ideal. But we're working with what we got here. In fact, I think I'm going to select this mask, and we're going to make some of this out here go away. Maybe we should just have it go away as it runs into the edge of the hair straight up, just like that. Maybe that's the way to make it look a little bit better. Yeah, that's okay. It still doesn't quite look right. But we're gonna roll with it. Maybe we'll go and put some bracelets around her hand. I think part of the problem is it's just a little bit too big. So let's try sizing down to like 20. Something like that. Let's see what that looks like. Well, we are on the layer mask. Let's undo that and select the layer itself. We're painting with white again. And I believe I'm going to turn pen pressure on here. And let's see here. Yeah, so this is kind of what I want. We're going to come up and come back around. Something like that. And then we can do the same thing here. And just, whoop, that's not quite how I want it to be. I want to come right around. I almost want to meet up right here with where the other one ended. I just keep going out too far. Come in tight. There we go. Something like that. And then once again, we would go into the layer mask, set our brush to black, and we would just paint away the bits that we don't want to see, make it look convincing that it's just tucking in behind her hand. You know, it's convincing as solid white strokes on top of a photograph would look. But you can see right there, we've just given her a little bit of a bracelet. We can go back to our layer. I'm selecting the layer, and I could zoom in, and I could do once more. We've got our pen set to pen pressure. We could go ahead and add some kind of design type aesthetic to this bracelet, make it look interesting, something like that. Might be kind of neat as well. So we zoom out and it's kind of like, hey, the bracelet has some shape to it. The other thing we can do is do things like outline her shoulders, outline her arms, give extra definition like to where her arm and the backside of like her bicep / shoulder are, forearm and the back of her arm. So we could create a new layer for this, and I would grab my brush tool. I would probably shut off pen pressure for this, and we could just go along the edge. Again, we got our smoothing cranked way up, so I could just bring this across the shoulder and then down that side. Boom, just kind of like that. And then come in here along the arm. Voila, something like that. Maybe I should bring it all the way up the arm that way. And it almost looks like it's too big. I'm going to undo both of those. That's way too big. Let's take it down even smaller than the outline on the hair. Maybe we'll go 10 pixels for this. So let's try this. There we go. Something kind of like that is cool. And then just, you know, just rough lines. So we'll just etch out right there maybe. We can turn pen pressure on here, and because we still want to get about the same size, we'll make it double the brush size, so we'll bring it up to 20, and I'm just going to make some streaks just along the outside of her arm there. Maybe I kind of like that look with the pen pressure turned on, so maybe we'll try to do something along her elbow here and come up the inside of her arm. You know, there's going to be a lot of this where you kind of just go with what kind of feels right. All right, something kind of like that. I just keep hitting Command or Control Z to undo when it's not perfect. There we go. Something kind of like that is nice. And maybe here on her arm, we'll do another kind of crosshatch type design, right? Something like that. Something else we can do, by the way, let's create another new layer. Just trying to break things up as much as possible. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and we'll make this brush a little bit larger, at least to 30, maybe even a little bit bigger. Let's go 40. We could do, the original artist has this thing where they kind of create these like little pullaways from the head, and this might be a good place to use fade. So we'll try fade. Fade to 500 is way too much. Maybe 200, and 200 still might be too much. No, 200 actually might be 200 might be good, and then we'll do a couple at 100. So we would kind of make this spring out that way, and then also that way. And I think my brush is just flat out too big, so let's bring it down to like 25. There we go, something like that. So we'll spring out that way. Let me undo that, because we should push this up to 200. I'm a professional, aren't I? There we go, 200. Now back this down to 100 for the two sort of smaller. This is almost like a sploosh looking effect, right? Like bloop, something's coming out. You know, a little drip of white hit the side of my head here, and then we'll come over to this side. Maybe we'll make the brush a little bit smaller. And this is just totally up to you. It's completely 100% personal taste. Let's go 200 on this, and we'll just go straight out. Ooh, 200 might be too much for that. Let's go 100. Let's do a really small one over here. So we'll go 100, and then we'll knock this down to like 50. And we'll just make a little bloop-de-blue, just kind of something like that. Maybe pull that up a little bit, something kind of, sort of like that. That looks pretty cool. And a lot of this is just, you know, draw and make it look how you want. The last little effect I want to show you is we'll create a new layer here. And this, we're actually going to create the piece of artwork, and then we'll sort of apply it to her. Now, you can do this a number of ways. I find that it's easiest if I draw some kind of guides. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use the ellipse tool here, and we're going to draw out a shape here. And I'm not going to give it a fill. I'm just going to give it a stroke. So I'll go with, I don't know, it can be anything. We'll go hot pink, and 20 points is probably fine. So I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'll draw out the first part of the stroke, and it's a dashed line. We want to just choose solid line here. There we go. Ooh, 20 is way too big. Let's go down to like 5. There we go. And then we can duplicate this, Command or Control J, and then hit Command or Control T to free transform. Hold down Shift and Alt to be Shift and Option, and just scale this way down, kind of like that. And we get this sort of donut shape. We can select both these ellipses, Command or Control E to merge them together. We probably don't want to do that actually, but we'll just lock these layers up so we don't move them, we don't mess them up. And down here on layer 4, well, that's our little splashy shapes, right? We want to create a totally new piece of artwork, so let's create a new layer above this. And here's where we're going to begin having some fun with this all over again. So once more, grab the brush tool, and I am going to make my brush bigger, number 1, so maybe like 30. And we're going to set the control to like, let's try 350 for a fade. So 350 might be a little too much. Let's go like 275. Let's try that. That's kind of nice. And we're going to begin by basically creating a half circle of these kind of teardroppy looking streaks like you see. I actually want to begin with bigger shapes though. So I'm going to go up to like 45. And I'm just going to begin pulling these shapes around this circle and forcing them kind of to follow along with this guide that I've created. You can see here how this is just it's kind of doing its own thing. And I'm only going to go with like a half circle, not too much further than that. And then I'm going to come into here and we'll fill in the smaller areas with smaller streaks to really give this a nice randomized effect. There we go. Great. Really nice. I'm going to go up this way. Very cool. All right, now let's make our brush a little bit smaller. So we'll go like 30. And I'm going to go ahead and, maybe too much. I'm going to knock this down to about 200 in terms of the length of the fade. There we go. There's really, again, no right or wrong way to do this. It's just a matter of personal taste and how the strokes fall for you. There we go. We're going to make the brush now a little bit smaller. And once more, we'll change the control. We'll go like 125, I think. And we'll begin making some really small streaks here and just kind of fill in some of the areas that need to be filled in. All right, this is probably enough. Again, you can spend as much or as little time on this effect as you like. I'm going to get rid of my 2 guide layers now because obviously we don't need them. They're not going to be a part of our finished artwork. And we have this really cool like swirling piece of art. I am going to actually convert this to a smart object so we can either make it big or small and not lose any kind of resolution. So convert to smart object. And then I'm going to go Command or Control T and I'm going to just rotate this here. And let's make it a bit smaller. So hold down Shift just to constrain proportions. And I'll probably move this into right about here, something like that. I will go ahead and commit the change. And here's where creating the selection of her is really helpful. We can go to the channels, Command or Control, click that, go back to layers. We have this up on a layer, hold down Alt or Option, and just click Add New Layer. And it's going to create a layer mask that just knocks away anything that appears on top of her. Now you can see we're still getting some white drippiness there. But we can always select our layer mask, grab our brush tool. I'm going to get rid of the fade. And I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger using my square bracket keys. I'm going to set black as my foreground color. And I can just come in here and paint away some of that stuff that is showing kind of where we don't want it to show. And then I'll back this thing out. And now we've got that really cool piece of artwork happening there. Now I can duplicate this layer, Command or Control J. I can just drag that layer mask down to the garbage, and we have a full piece of art that we can play with. So once more, I'm going to hit Command or Control T. We're going to move it over to the other side of her body. I think I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, although that's going to make it look just a little bit blurry. Maybe I'll stretch it out just a little bit, kind of like that. Something sort of kind of like that'll be cool. And once more, we will just use the mask. So I can Alt or Option drag the layer mask to just copy it up once more. And you can see it just cuts away the stuff that we don't want to see. We can go ahead and create a new layer at this point. And I'll grab my brush again. I probably want smaller than 45 pixels. We'll probably go down to about 20 or something like that. Maybe even less. Well, no, 20 is probably fine because we're going to go with pen pressure. And what I want to do is create a line that kind of comes out and around her, sort of like this, past her arm, and then is going to go back behind her waist. At least that'll be the optical illusion. So I'm going to start it here. I'm going to pull this way. Whoops. I'm going to pull that way and around. Nope. Something sort of like that. And now in order to make this optical illusion work, we want to first create our layer mask. Then we'll load that channel as a selection down here. There's channel woman to get the selection we want. And we're only going to paint away certain parts of our shape. So obviously where it begins should be behind her. So we'll grab our brush tool, and I'm painting with the color black, so I can just begin painting this away. I'm going to make the brush nice and big to get rid of it quickly. Great. And then we want it to pass behind her arm. So I think the front side will pass behind her arm. So we'll paint this away, kind of make it tuck in behind her arm there, and then of course on that side. And then it'll come back across her arm, but the back side will tuck in behind her dress over here. All right, so something like that I think will be kind of cool. Command or Control D to deselect. And you can see we now have this line that sort of looks like it's intertwining through what we have going on. Now, in best case world, we would clean up the bottom of the hair here a little bit, and we probably wouldn't want our lines intersecting quite like that. But even now on this, we can go ahead and, I'm going to zoom in just a touch, we could apply more of these sort of diagonal shapes out here. Maybe make this brush a little bit smaller. You can use the brush tool. You can write different words and all sorts of things. And I'll probably go in now and just touch this image up a bit. I'll speed the video up as you're watching this, and you can just kind of see how I'll take this artwork and play with it a little bit and make it kind of the way I want it to be. So as you can see, it's really just a process of going through, using the brush, messing around with it, a little pen pressure here, a little fade there, changing the size, using that smoothness feature can be helpful, and just going in and having some fun with it. It's not the most perfect rendition. If I spent more time on it, I could make it look a lot different. Maybe nicer, maybe not, who knows. It's just a matter of going and playing with it and really seeing what you get. All right, well, there you have it. That is the final finished effect. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did enjoy it, make sure you subscribe to my channel. If you're on Discord, check out our Discord server, discord.me/tutvid. It's a happening place. We got a nice little community over there. You can share your work. If you create this effect, I'd love to see it. Post it in Discord. Or if you're not on Discord, throw it up on Instagram and tag me in the actual image, not just in the caption, because that stuff goes away in my notifications. But if you tag me in the actual image, it'll come through my tagged images. I can go over there and like it and comment and, show you a little bit of love for what you've done. And I just like seeing what everybody creates here in the community. So guys, for this one, for manipulating the brush tool and all that jitteriness and fading and brush pen pressure nonsense, that's it. Get it? Got it? Good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to my channel for more great tutorials every day. Also, buy my course. It helps us do what we do, and this channel is supported by viewers just like you. You can also just click the thumbnail and watch another video from this channel. See you next time, guys.